everybody, and welcome back to Long Distance Friends. I am so excited for our conversation today. I have such a special guest. Today's guest is Doreen Kelly. Doreen is, first off, a leader. She's an executive coach. She's a leadership coach. She is someone who many people look up to and learn from and lean on. She is someone who is so active in her community. She was a head of school for over 2 decades at Ravenscroft, which is an independent school, preschool through 12. She is the co-founder of the Creds Group, where she leads executives and does leadership coaching. And I am just so grateful to learn from her today and pick her brain on all things leadership and creating teams. And so, Doreen, and I can call you Aunt Doreen because you're Nate's aunt. Doreen, welcome to Long Distance Friends.
Oh my goodness, what a pleasure, Anna, to join you. And you can call me Doreen, Aunt Doreen, whatever works. Okay.
And I love your dog on the couch. So it's just giving me all the cozy vibes right now.
Thank you.
I had to.
He's gonna be with. This is his last night with us before he goes back to Ryan and Lindsay soon. So he's
Buddy.
very attached. Yes.
He's so sweet. Oh, I was going to say, one thing that I've been thinking about lately is how the workforce is changing so drastically, how people are working remote more than ever and being less in person. And with the rise of AI and technology, there's so much change and it can feel really overwhelming. But one thing that has been sort of grounding for me is realizing that sturdy leadership and good thriving teams will always be important. And so that's why I think people like me who are maybe earlier in our careers can learn from people like you, seasoned leaders like you who have seen so much, who have so much experience. And so yeah, I would just love to learn everything I can from you today. So,
Well, I hope I can help.
oh, I know you can. So, walk me through a little bit of what you do now with the Creds Group.
Sure. I founded that with my husband, Chris. And after, as you said, an extended career with a focus on people development, young people development, and team development, and just the gift of the training I've received over the years, wanted to play that forward and help individual leaders and their teams maximize their own individual potential. My primary focus, though, I would say, is inviting clients to learn more about themselves so that they can become more self-aware, more connected to their teams. These journeys are just a lot more fun with others
Yes.
than to do it on our own. And so those are concrete skills. And I have deep belief that kiddos as young as yours have the opportunity to learn the skills of leadership at a very young age. They might not be able to spell out all the words, but I'll give you an example. I know 4-year-olds can learn about resilience. And we did this in describing the difference between bubbles and a rubber ball. And young children can describe the characteristics of bubbles and what appears to be fun and fragile, and a rubber ball that bounces back. So they might not be able to spell the word resilient, but if you ask after that launch lesson, when a kiddo is having a meltdown, do you see yourself as being a bubble right now or a rubber ball? Which would you prefer? Inevitably, they'll begin to say, I know I need to bounce back. I want to be like the rubber ball.
Absolutely.
So I just have a deep belief that the sooner that we get that conceptually involved with young people, these are skills that can be learned over time. And I know I remain committed to learning them myself.
That is very comforting to hear because I think sometimes I have deep respect for all mothers, whether you work at work, are a working mom or a stay-at-home mom or a mix of both or whatever. It is so cool to hear that because it just helps remind me how important how important the work of motherhood is, even as young as age 4. We can be teaching these lessons. And so that's beautiful. What are some things that you are seeing as you are coaching today's leaders? What are some of the common issues that pop up that people come to you for?
Well, you're going to see a lot of parallels in our conversation. I would say, someone just asked me this the other day, and I would say navigating probably predictive anxiety.
Mm,
And we do that as moms too, right?
mhm.
There are times I pray for peace, but I'm really seeking control. And I
Oh,
see
yeah.
that in leaders too,
Wow, you can say
right?
that again.
I
Wow.
seek peace. I pray for peace. Lord, give me peace. And then I barely finish the sentence and then I'm off to control. And
Wow.
I see that in a lot of leaders today. They're just consumed with the loneliness of the role sometimes or the weariness
Mm.
of it and just the concerns that can feel at times overwhelming. And so parallel tracks, we see that as parents too when we're
Oh, man.
feeling sometimes the loneliness of the work or our kids having a meltdown or we have a colleague having a meltdown.
Right? Everybody has meltdowns.
No. And so the task, right? The job is to keep working at seeing each other as full human beings despite behaviors that can be aggravating. So in my line of work, we try to look at leadership as tensions to navigate versus problems to solve because we don't want to turn people into our problems, excuse me, to
Wow.
solve. And so just holding that space that I think many people get into leadership thinking, I've got a vision, I have a strategic plan, I have all these ideas. And if people just listen to me, we could go execute. And
Wow.
I see a problem and I think I'd be good at solving that problem. And it took me a while to realize, oh, I don't really spend much of my days solving problems like I thought. Managing tensions,
Mm.
that I spend a lot of time navigating tension points. And sometimes both tensions can be right, and two things can be felt at the same time. And I know you and I enjoy a particular professional, Dr. Becky.
Yes.
We've had some thinking around that too, right?
Yeah. Walk me through an example of a tension that's to be managed versus a problem that's to be solved. Do you have an example of that?
Excuse me.
Boy, do I.
I mean, I can. All right. I remember early in my career getting the job, and every year the parents in our community, everybody in the community, carpool in the first 2 weeks of any school year in any school is just a nightmare. And like many before me, I thought I was going to get the job and I'm going to solve that. It's my turn and I'm going to solve it. And the first 2 years, I thought, unless I come up with millions of dollars to actually move the driveway, this is not a problem to be solved. It stinks every year for about 2 weeks until people get to meet each other and they consolidate and we all take a deep breath. It's a tension every year. It's not a problem to solve. So rather than waste the energy to solve something, because that was not a strategic priority, was to build a new driveway, I could create strategy and just get up before school and say, I already know this is going to stink. So if you are a parent that gets really concerned about sitting in a line that's super frustrating for you, feel free to get there early and sit in your car. You do you. If you don't want to sit in a line and you don't want to sit waiting for half an hour, come toward the end of the line. And if your kiddo's not outside, we can assure you we're going to keep your kid safe.
Mm,
It's just a tension to be navigated. It wasn't anything I was going to fix.
wow. That is such a good example. So in other words, you're not actually trying to fix the problem. You're trying to help people manage the emotions and the expectations
There
that
you go.
that are surrounding the problem. Wow, that's so good.
Tempting
Uh,
to fix, even with our kids, right? That list too. I
yes.
was thinking of your sister-in-law who just posted about her kid and it was like strategy to get his front tooth out. It's a stitch and a
Oh,
half. And you'll see it later, I'm sure. But it was tickled me no end because there's part of me, it was like, Oh, I bet you wanted to get in there and help him get that out. And guess what? He figured it out for himself. It was
Mhm.
dangling there probably forever, and you wanted to probably do something about it, but he figured it out. Well,
Oh,
it's just
man.
something to manage.
Yeah. Something to manage. Tell me a little bit more about your phrase predictive anxiety. What does that mean?
Well, your father-in-law is very good about language and is super helpful. We have shared space in this. And I'm one that struggles with that. And it shows up like this. I get out over my skis and contemplating all the possible scenarios in an attempt to be prepared and to control.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's exhausting. In
Mhm.
some ways, it can be minimally helpful to help me be prepared as a leader. Overflexed is just flat out exhausting. Instead of just sitting in today is a good day and everything is working out fine,
Mm.
did I really need to be ruminating on that possible scenario? On the plus side, it helps me think about perhaps risk management and being able to think of all the possibilities, but it's actually not going to actually save the kid who might fall off the playground equipment.
Yeah.
It might help me remember to make sure, do we have enough chips or, for the landing? But it's actually not going to position me for a little human being human and
Mm.
maybe following the rules or not following the rules. So there's points where it's somewhat helpful in preparing, but overflexed and landing in perpetual worry is not helpful whatsoever.
Yeah. What are some things that you are teaching to get out of that headspace of trying to think of all of the things that you could do to to solve a potential issue? What things should we be doing instead?
Well, I
What can
think
we
that's
replace
where
that with?
I know, like a really good team or really good mom friends or good people in our lives who are in love might notice behaviors that are not helpful. For me,
Mm,
sometimes it's my brother, and he might say, I'm sort of curious about that. You've brought that up a couple of times. What's your plan? What's your strategy? Okay, now it's time to put it to bed,
mm,
right? Sounded
okay.
like you had a plan.
Yeah.
I think there are times where you realize the arc of the universe is not bending in your direction no matter how well you plan it. So
Yeah.
sometimes, but sometimes, if you don't have a diverse group of friends who know and love you and who can kind of provide you some feedback, like I said, on your behavior, and that approach you with some in a spirit of love and curiosity,
Yeah.
and that's like for me, I'd have great colleagues over the years who would just say, "Hey, I'm really wondering about that. You seem to mention that. Is there a way I can support you or reassure you? If my area well, will that release you?" And a lot of times it would be, and I'd have to check myself. Am I inadvertently suggesting to them that I don't have trust in them? Am I asking the right questions? Am I listening well? So there's lots of different little tools that you use to kind of get unlocked from what could be an unhealthy loop.
Yeah. Who is the first person that comes to mind that has done that for you?
Oh gosh, my brother Ray, plenty of
Oh.
times. But we're closest siblings, and I mean, all my brothers in some degree, and trusted, former colleagues too, and
Mhm.
good friends who will reflect back to me and they'll mirror back to me.
Mm, okay.
I'll give you an example. I was massively stuck on something, and I called my brother Ray, and I was kind of pretty indignant about the behavior I had encountered in someone that I thought we had had a really good relationship. And so I got myself so worked up, Anna. I was appalled. Like I felt like now I'd like gotten to appalled.
Been there.
And like I'm like gonna rise back up and go have a brave conversation because I'm gonna drive 2 more hours back and go, let me have it. But this behavior. And and my brother Ray said, he listened all the way through, which is his gift. He listened all the way through, and this is my strategy. And he said, "Well, is that strategy for you or for the other person?" nailed me. And I said, "Oh, it's for me. I know it's for me. I just didn't like how that felt."
Yeah.
And he
Oh,
said, "Okay, that's a good starting point. Do you really think the other person has an interest in this point of reconnection? Does the behavior in what ways does the behavior suggest there's an opening for reconnection?" And I
yeah.
was like, "Zero, none. None. I want it because I'm a human being that doesn't mind getting through the sticky and the hard to get to a point of reconnection. I find it challenging when people choose not to, and I get appalled.
Yeah.
How would you want to reconnect? I can even say I'm sorry if I've offended you in some way. And yet, some people get to choose to remain in that state, and that's not something I'm going to go fix
Mm,
and make better,
wow.
and that's okay. So that's a real time, like a couple of weeks ago example.
Oh, man. That's so good. I would love to get into our conversation about anger because I feel like that was a good segue. So,
Yeah.
I came across a quote a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about emotional intelligence in my community group that I'm in through my church. For whatever reason, it just came up. And someone shared this quote from Aristotle that says, "Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person to the right degree at the right time for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everyone's power and is not easy." So, one of my questions I had for you is, when is it okay to be angry? And is it ever okay? And how can we, if it is okay, how do we harness our anger? How do we calm our anger? How do we deal with our anger that's maybe
Mhm.
pointed towards our team? And is it okay?
Oh gosh, what a great question. Well, first and foremost, your grandma Casey would always say, feelings are neither right nor wrong, they are. So we
Mm,
don't want to be in a position to deny what we feel. They're okay to have. How we regulate them, how we express them, what triggers us to get to that point is worthy of some introspection. I love that Aristotle quote. I think, he had a belief, particularly around matters of injustice, that it was okay to express that. We also have the example of Jesus Christ going into the temple, who also had strong emotion around hypocrisy and exploitation.
it's a great point.
Both are valid, both like big experiences, big emotions. I think the main difference between the two would be Aristotle does make room in some cases for revenge to be okay. Jesus does not.
Yeah,
He points us this the way to be forgiveness. So,
it's a great point.
right, and that would be maybe a distinction, from a philosophical versus a and, not an or a but and a faith perspective. So how do we navigate that? One, I think it's learning to be self-aware and know that if we as a team, for example, if we're working in a group or a team, we have shared standards, we have shared norms, and we find ourselves falling short, that what is a productive way to work with each other to express when we're falling short?
Mm,
And at times when I have expressed that emotion, it's important as a leader to make clear I'm not mad at you. I might be frustrated, disappointed, maybe even angry that we're not achieving a level of success and we're living into our best selves as a team. And that to direct it at the effort versus the human being.
mm,
And that both feelings can be true. I can care about you and hold you accountable. That's not a either or for me. That's a both and.
yeah.
And so I think it has its place as emotion. I don't think long term it's effective leadership skill as a full on motivation. I think Aristotle saw it as its potential to motivate others, to light a fire, that sort of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't think that it's sustaining in terms of a motivational tool. I think generally speaking, I think we get further when we demonstrate care and concern for other human beings while we're holding them accountable
Yeah, that's so
in the
good.
longer haul. But as an emotion, it's one of an emotion. So I don't think it can be denied. And certainly if it's expressed in a way that's not productive or moves a relationship forward in a positive direction, golly, aren't we so fortunate to have forgiveness and an opportunity for reconciliation and reconnection? And there's beautiful spiritual training and gifting in that to go to someone and say, I'm aware of a behavior. I didn't show up as my best self, and that behavior was observable. If we had a video on this exchange, as we do right now, we could replay it and see the behavior. And I take responsibility that I wasn't showing up for my best self. And where can we reconnect at different points in the project where I have a better line of sight so I'm not being reactive, or we're in a state of alignment moving forward. So it can happen, and it's not the end of the world if it happens. That's what I'm sorry is for.
Yeah, that's good. So, you may need to give me some tough love over here because because I get angry at people.
So fast?
You know what? When I would be working at the marketing agency that I worked at before I became a mom, I would get angry at people, and uh it was because they had done something to hold me back, or they had done something to hold the project back, or it was something that they were not doing, right? Somehow they had fallen short, which I know is total pride in me.
It's okay.
But when we are angry at people, how do we adjust our how do we rethink? How do we adjust? Or is it just a matter of seeing that person in a different light and appreciating their differences? And you know what I mean? How do we get
Yeah.
past being angry at them to be angry at the bigger picture?
Well, I'd say the first step, if you were my client and I was working with you, I want to isolate more specifically what behaviors are triggering for you. Now, what I heard
Oh,
was
yeah.
there's a timeline,
Mhm.
delays, and things that impact your work. So I heard you on that. And you strike me as someone who's going to show up in the world more organized
Mhm.
than maybe the average person might be. So, what I invite, and it's always an invitation, is to sort of chart what situations, so it's the S, what situations, and situations are timestamps.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
when there's a behavior that's observable, this comes from the Center for Creative Leadership. They talk about being able to give very specific, and by this way, this works great as a parent too, very specific feedback that's rooted in the situation first, the behavior, and then the feeling. Often, two times, we want to go to the feeling. We want you to know how mad I am that you impacted me in such a negative way.
Yeah.
Well, let me start with this. Most human beings want to be judged on their intent. And the reality is, we're judged on our impact.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yep.
so, it goes back to
Yep.
Matthew in the book of Matthew when
Mhm.
Jesus calls us out about the speck in someone else's eye
Mhm.
versus the log on our own. So we're hyper focused in on the specks and, not worried about as much about the log. But we go back to the situation, and the situation, I like to refer to it as the time where it's recordable. So if the video was on or the tape player was playing, if we invited each other to rewind it, and if I give you an example, if I said, and you want to do it in a timely way, like within 24, 48 hours. If I had said to you, if we had a meeting 2 days ago, and I had said, hey, Anna, do you have a few minutes? I want to touch base with you and provide some feedback. Are you open to that? And
Wow.
you'll be nervous and you'll be a little, yeah, okay. Now,
That's
you
great
should,
language, though. That is so
right?
o
It's an
open. Yes.
invitation. And if you
Yeah.
said, no, I'm really busy right now, I said, okay, let me know when it works for you. Great. You say, fine. We get out on a Zoom call and you say, okay, I'm open. I said, the situation is 2 days ago and you and I were on a Zoom call.
Mhm.
And you go, okay, yeah, I can kind of remember that because you're trying to locate, like, uh-oh, what am I going to hear? Now we're going to get to the B, the behavior. I was in the middle of pitching something to us and the team. And a couple of times during the presentation, I observed you roll your eyeballs a couple of times.
Mm.
So there's the B. That's the isolated behavior. And rather than go to 3 other people and gossip and say, "Did you see Anna? Did you see her roll her eyeballs?"
Yep.
and create this sort of silo of indignation,
Sure.
we're gonna treat each other like human beings, and I'm gonna ask you about what I observed. And you're gonna go, "Okay, maybe you remember doing it, maybe you don't. Chances are you don't." And then I'm gonna get to the I part of the SBI. I'm gonna talk about the impact. Well, the story I was telling myself is that you thought my idea stunk because, like, so I'm looking for help me understand because I want to get better at this, but I was so stuck on you rolling your eyeballs. I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, this happens all the time. Someone goes, "Oh, oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, no, I wasn't rolling my eyeballs at you. We have a team norm that no phones on in the meeting, and my phone was buzzing, and I told my kids
Mm.
not to bother during the meeting. I was reacting to the phone in my pocket. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you'd even think," a little defensive, "that I would do that to you."
Yep.
No, I'm not. It was an observable behavior.
Wow. Oh, that's
Okay.
so good.
Boy, we're at a point of reconciliation. Oh, so you didn't think my idea stunk? No. Well, if you were distracted, are there points you want to hear more about it? Or did you get it? Do I need to clarify it? Yes, that would be helpful. No, I got it. I've got your back. Boom. So that would be an example of a constructive one. This works great with kids, by the way,
Yeah.
but you want to do it 5 to 1 positive
Mm.
over constructive. So, positive one, you have a tween. I had this example driving to the beach, and one of my, well, it's going to give it away. It was Aaron. We were listening T Swift all the way down. Now, I happen to like T Swift. It's perfectly fine. And it's almost 2 hours straight of T Swift, which is fine.
Everyone
And
has their
about,
limits.
no, well, about 3/4 of the way, Erin turned and she said, "Hey, you want to put on something else? Something you would like?" And we got to our destination. I thought, oh, here's a great example. Here's a great opportunity to practice. And we got unpacked. And I said, "Hey, Erin, do you mind are you open for some feedback?" And she said, confused, yeah. And I said, situation. About an hour or so, we were driving down in the car, locating it, her brain's trying to click in, yeah. And again, if we had the recorder on, it would have recorded her saying, "You said to me, 'Hey mom, would you like a different radio station on?'" And she said, "Yeah, I remember." And I said, "I just need to let you know the impact in me is I was so grateful." I'm using my feeling words in the I section. I was grateful. I was proud that I would have been fine if we listened to it the whole way. But that you thought of me in that moment just really made me happy and just
Aw.
pleased. And I just wanted to say thank you. It was just very lovely. And I just wanted to say thank you. And can you imagine if we practiced that with our
Mm.
kids?
And our
And
spouses.
yeah, to build on
Yeah.
behaviors that impact us to the positive. So when the constructive ones have to be shared and not avoided, there's a bank of goodwill that's brought up. So when we do have to have the courageous conversations, people can trust that they will be in love and not out of anger exclusively, even if there is a feeling of frustration or disappointment or even anger. It's not where it's really coming from. That makes
Oh,
sense?
oh, that makes so much sense. That's so good.
Mhm.
I love the phrase too, the story that I told myself, because who
Oh,
came up with that? What do you remember their name?
I have no idea, but we are all particularly as women in particular, fall victim to this ridiculous, ongoing fill in the blank, whatever story. We're not good enough. We're not this enough. We're name
Mhm.
it. And it's not healthy rather than just putting a stop to that and testing that assumption.
Yeah. Yep. It's
The
so
truth.
generous. It's so generous. It's so humble. It just is magic. I love that.
Mhm,
So, I would love to get into a little bit more about your health journey because
mhm,
I found one of your previous colleagues that worked with you. She had a wonderful quote about you. She said that you get the best of Doreen in every moment, whatever the situation requires. People feel that. That they feel that they're getting your best. And I just love that. I look up to that so much. And I know that you have not always had the easiest health journey. You certainly had your trials with that. And so how have you found ways to show up as your best self?
oh, I mean, this is like the story I'm telling myself and to my younger self and
Yeah.
you and anyone else listening to this wonderful pod. I mean, first and foremost, what a generous comment. Very generous because it's just not possible. I mean, these are not journeys of perfection. And so I don't want to create an ideal that that happens all of the time. And yet we're all going through things that attempt to rob us from the joy that we know, even when we think of James 1 2, when we consider it joy when we're facing trials. To consider it is not a feeling, it's a consideration, it's a claim,
Mm.
it's a proclamation, right? To consider it joy. And so, probably like some of your listeners, suffered, a birth loss, a pregnancy loss before I was able to have Ryan. I struggle with Hashimoto's. I struggle as a recovering type A who's trying to realize that as I said earlier, I will often pray for my own peace and then I will battle the need to control. So, all of those things, I think, for me, it's seeking feedback when I'm getting out over my skis, keeping myself rooted in, for me, gospel music and worship music, helping to reset that it isn't a journey of perfection and where is my hope in. And I find when I rely on myself, massively fall short. And I'll share this with your listeners. You know, I love most any kind of music, but in particular, Christian music. And Lauren Daigle has this great song called Rescue. And I share it with a sense of hope where the lyrics go, "You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless, though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear your whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you. In the middle of the darkest night, it's true. I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over." And I keep that on my phone. I keep that printed out on my desk. So when there are moments when the story I'm telling myself is not edifying what I know I'm called to do in this season of my life, when the one who attempts to rob that joy is feeling too close, that the one who loves me best and most
Mm.
is going to leave the 99 and come go get me when I'm not in a space where I'm aligned and meant to be. And so when I get stuck, like anybody does, is to reorient it back, as well as not just spiritually, excuse me, physically making sure I'm rested, which is yuck, yuck, yuck when you've got toddlers. Like
Yeah.
it's easier said than done. But hydrated and good
Sure,
night
yeah.
rest, or just checking, like just going through the checklist. How am I doing mentally? How am I doing spiritually? How am I doing physically? Am I isolating myself? Am I staying connected to others? All those little check systems. Or as you and I were talking about at some point where I'm hitting a low and catching up with some sisters and saying, I need some sister time.
Yes.
What does that look like?
Mm.
And I will say this was a particular time, a prideful time, particularly after my dad died, your grandpa died, where I probably prided myself as a woman that if my being were like a car, fine car, and the gas tank
Obviously.
yeah, of course, got to about a quarter a tank, I'd go get the pedicure and the manicure. I'd do the things that the world tells you would be good to do for self-care on that self-care list. But what I didn't recognize in my own pride that a lot of my life in its fullness was pretty full to the brim. So there wasn't enough room at
Mm.
some points where there was room for exquisite joy or grief because the cup was just so full. And so at that time of my life when he passed, I didn't even get the warning signs that tell you 10 more miles. I was like flat out going, and it jolted me. It jolted me. So a lot of my practice now is really reminding my clients, I know you think you're on a quarter tank. How would we know if you're really closer to fumes?
Wow.
What does
Yeah.
fumes look like? Because I thought I was in a quarter tank and it was fumes. And that was very flattening and leveling and convicting about boundaries, when to say no to things, when to manage what good enough looks like versus a perfection mindset. So I'll pause there.
That is so good. Yeah, and if you can't put language to that difference between halfway there versus on fumes, that means you have some introspection because you don't know then, you're right. I spend a lot of time reflecting about the intimacy of how God made us as humans and how he made us with limitations and how that is actually such an intimate thing because that means that we have to rely on him and we have to go on a walk and we have to get sleep. You know what I mean? We're not built to be beings of constant production. That's not his design at all for us. And so I love
Mhm.
what and what I'm hearing you saying is, looking at the whole picture, the whole person, that it's not just checking on yourself physically and checking the boxes physically, like drinking enough water, but it's also your spirit. One thing I love is going to a place where you feel small, right? Because we can get so big in our own worlds and so important in our own worlds, and that's not to knock anything that we do, but at the end of the day, we are just a speck of dust on this earth, and how amazing is that?
It's
Sometimes
great.
it's amazing to hear.
Oh, and so good to be reminded. I mean, there were times, to your point, where I could take that tone, that very directive tone that my work required of me at times, because people are looking for confident leadership. And early days, I would get home, and if someone asked me what was for dinner, I might lose my mind.
Yeah.
I would almost freeze. Like, I can make big decisions, navigate crisis. What's for dinner? Are you kidding me? Like, somebody else in this family system has to, maybe make a decision. It wasn't the intent, but or worse than that, I'd come home being boss, you
Mhm.
know, directing everybody. What I did find helpful is there were times where, like, and I lived where I worked, so there wasn't much of a break to decompress sometimes, where Uncle
Yeah.
Chris would call and say, did you get lost? Because I'd say, I'll go get the gallon of milk. And I might drive to the other side of Raleigh to go get it and go, did you get lost? I just need to decompress
Yep.
was one strategy. Or two, I'd literally go home and get in my closet because I just needed 20 minutes and I would strip down this part of my day
Mm,
and emerge from my closet so I would remove my other role.
yeah.
And the third,
Physically doing it. Yeah.
physically doing
Yeah.
it just to go, okay, because if I don't decouple it, I mean, you take your insides wherever you go. So if you're not careful, that's a
Yep.
sort of decouple it. And there are times as the kids got older, they would say, do you need to go for a walk? Yes, that sounds like a good idea. I probably do. So again, that feedback loop
Yeah.
can be helpful.
My 3-year-old the other day, I was getting flustered and frustrated about something, and she turns to Nate and she goes, "Mama's a little frustrated, but she'll be okay soon." It's like, "Yep, I just need a minute."
There's
I'll
that
be
mirror. There's
Yes,
that mirror.
exactly.
But to your
So
point earlier that, you know, to be wonderfully made, to be wonderfully loved, and to learn how to be in relationship with other human beings, whether it's our spouses or within families and our little people and our grown-up people, and that those relationships are constantly changing, or we have colleagues at work.
mhm,
And, you had asked me a question earlier, how to navigate that when those people that we care about or work with or live with frustrate us. And I would say to flip the script and what would it look like to be curious
mhm,
and go, I wonder what it would be if I gave the situation the behavior and the impact on that behavior and came at it in a spirit of, in the last two times, there was this situation, there was this behavior of lateness on the project. And the story I'm telling myself is one, it's leading to frustration in ways that I think doesn't make our relationship as healthy as it could be. Are there ways that I could be more helpful for you?
mm,
Because again, my type A self could give you 10 reminders if you wanted it. I don't
yeah,
want to micromanage you, so I'll give you two. And then if you don't meet them, then I'm going to get frustrated. What would be most helpful for you to meet the deadline? And I want to start with an in care conversation because over time, I want to know I'm going to keep trying before we move into an accountability conversation. I guess the key is what would it look like to not treat other people like an object and try? Because the second we say, Anna, did you see her do that? And all of a sudden you become a pronoun and we'd start
mhm,
using names. I think that's a more precarious spot and it becomes easier to get people to agree with you,
yeah, yeah, approaching
particularly
the
that they, right? And a lot of times we assume that people are doing those behaviors to hurt us or they have loads of intention. And most of the time, people, I believe, are generally operating from a position of unawareness. They've always done it that way, and no one's had the guts to be curious.
yeah, that's good. It's really good. So, one thing that I really want to talk to you about is having the guts, speaking of guts,
Mhm.
to stick to your values, even when outside noise feels debilitating. One thing that I think is fascinating about your role at Ravenscroft is you had so many voices from all kinds of people coming at you, from parents who are not always the easiest to deal with, to donors, to teachers, to I mean, I'm sure the list goes on, but one thing that I know that you were very passionate about was keeping the focus on the students and the students flourishing. And I am confident that throughout your time there that you had people who had ideas or really strong opinions about the way things should be that was not in line with the students' highest flourishing. And so I would love to know, how did you stand strong in that? And how did you stick to your values knowing that people were going to be upset with you?
I can't say that I did it super well early on. I think I occupied a place of defensiveness because I had to defend the handbook or I had to defend.
Yeah.
I think once I came to terms with the fact, on help me understand what has you so upset today.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'd make the assumption you're upset because I disciplined your child and you don't like the consequences.
Mhm.
Well, as it turns out, parents in particular are very upset initially at their child's behavior. And again, it gets back to that tension point. And they're holding all this upset at their kid, and they love their kid to the moon and back. And it feels so incompatible. And eventually it gives way of going, I can't stay angry at my kid. I love my kid, but there's still this uck. And so, oh, I'm going to hold the space for that uck for now.
Mhm.
Right. And so, or there's times where, as the representative of the organization, that someone in the organization has made a misstep, that you have to hold yourself accountable as the person going to be most accountable and say to someone, we could have done that better.
Yeah.
But that's a form of courage rather than defend, right? I'll give you an example, though, that where the crossfires, oh gosh, many years ago, it was decided that the upper school, which is 9 through 12, that we were going to rearrange the lockers around advisories. Doesn't that sound like a lovely idea? And but you got to remember, high school students, they're actually going through a phase of life where they're practicing indignation. Like that's
Yeah, true.
right. It's going to be over all
Yeah,
this other stuff. We hope it's going to morph into world peace or
sure.
um,
Yeah,
finding water in places or clothing and all sorts of injustices that they can go solve. But for now, it's the
sure.
environment that they're in.
Mhm.
And so we had a fail in that all the adults said, wow, that sounds like a fantastic idea. And rather than to invite the student government leadership in, it was not well. We didn't bring the students into the sausage making soon enough. And we basically rearranged the living room of their experience.
Mm,
And they had some very strong feelings about it.
okay.
And they deserved to, because we could have done better. And I had some mostly pretty brilliant letters written to me.
From
And
students?
oh, yeah. And a couple that were
Yeah.
not so. And the not so's, I brought them into my office and I said, I need to feel better that we're teaching writing a little bit better. So I love this letter and it needs to be redone. And let's clean it up.
Yeah.
We're going to rough draft. So perfectly
Brilliant move on
fine,
your part. Brilliant
right?
move.
Always teaching and learning.
Yeah.
So out of the, I don't know, 2 days into this, I get a call from a mom and she is going off about her kid's locker being changed and he's upset about it. And so I listened and I said, so tell me again what exactly you're upset about. Well, he's not happy his locker's moved. And I said, okay. Oh, I'm going to have to put you on a special list I'm creating right now. What list? And I said, well, let me ask you this. How many hours a day are you on campus? Not on campus, Doreen. I dropped my kid off to school. I said, okay. So when was the last time you've ever been to your kid's locker? Well, maybe once, maybe an orientation or something. I said, okay. I'm going to put you on the list of you might be a mother who will call your child's first employer if he doesn't get the review he thinks he deserves.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
And she goes, I would never do that. And I said, well, you're calling me about a locker. Now, your kid deserves to write me a blistering letter for sure, because that's his lived experience 6, 8 hours a day at the school. I'm fine with that. You're calling me about a locker.
Wow.
And she was, I mean, I knew her well enough to have that conversation. And she said, take me off that list. I will not be on that list. And I said, okay. So what you can encourage him to do if he hasn't written me a letter is to create some agency with him. So if he comes home and he's still ripped about the locker, here's the one question every parent should be equipped to ask their child starting from 3 years old on. What's your plan?
Mm,
What's your plan? So and so wasn't nice to me at daycare, wasn't. That sounds tricky. What's your plan? And help to develop some resiliency and some agency, which she did. And she was a good mom the rest of the year. We had a good laugh over it. But that's an
oh, that's
example
so
of
good.
multiple constituencies seeing at that. So what do? You anchor the decision in your mission, vision, and your values in a handbook, and you weather the understandable disappointment. And it's okay. I've learned it's not easy. I can't make everyone happy.
Yeah.
And I've learned to sit in a space if people want to express their feelings. As one dad said to me, I'm just so mad you made this decision. And I said, yes, you've expressed that several times. And I mean, it's really, and all I kept saying is, yes, I have made the decision.
Mm,
I
mhm.
have made the decision. And I'm okay for you to sit in, and aside from moving the decision, in what other ways can I be helpful to you? Would it be helpful for you if I met with your son again to let him know I both care about him and I'm holding accountability? And I think that's where kids get confused. We have to use the language of the both and with our
Yeah.
kids. I love you and I'm disappointed. It's not an either or proposition. I can hold the space, like Dr. Becky said, I can hold it for both. And so that we can continue those dialogues with the kids. And if I can assist a family, and oftentimes I'll bring a kid and they're head down, they don't want to have the conversation. I care about you. And once you reconcile yourself to the truth and accept responsibility, let me know in what other ways I can assist you. And oftentimes, even if kids were separated, they reach back out to me and we'd have coffee, write you a letter of recommendation. Let's tell the story of your redemption and your growth. Even if it means not being at our school anymore, it doesn't mean we have to have a broken connection.
Wow.
Can't force it, but the invitation sits there if you choose,
That's so good.
right? But the feelings like it's hard. I would prefer that people like me. It's a
Sure.
preference.
Yep.
It's a preference.
Same.
I would prefer if my kids liked me. It's a preference. And I also know for their overall health and development, there will be times that I will not be as beloved as I would hope.
Yeah, but to your point, you have to be rooted to weather that storm, to weather the emotions, or else you're gonna go all over the place in that wind.
Mm,
Oh, man. Oh, that's such good examples. Thank you for sharing those.
yeah.
So, as we come towards the end of our conversation, I would love to know, selfishly, I know you had to make tough decisions, being a working mom, right? And in a time when that probably wasn't as popular. And so as you look back, hindsight, 2020, would you go back and tell yourself anything? I want to know.
Oh, gosh, what a beautiful question. I would be remiss if I didn't say that my journey would not have been as fruitful and the blessing it's been in the space that I've chosen to do the both and without an amazing partner
It's beautiful. Yeah.
and to have conversations where we'd pick each other up in moments that particularly in my job where a crisis would hit and it was going to my work life was gonna function as if we had another child. As we joked, it
Yeah.
was the perpetual infant, a part of our family.
You lived on
Yeah,
campus, right? The whole time. So
yeah, yeah.
you're living at
So,
work.
yeah. So what would I tell my younger self is to thank him sooner
Oh, that's beautiful.
and, more in the moment and to be expressing that appreciation and gratitude to all those around there because it does take a village in some ways, a family village. And to my children who understood the assignment too. I asked my kids years ago, I sent an email to all of them and my daughter in loves and said, I'm having to speak to parents who want parenting advice. And it occurred to me, I asked the same question. I said, my mama heart can only take one thing. What would you advise for me to do differently as your mom? I'm sure you could give me more than one, but I can only take one each.
Yeah.
And one of my kids said, no, mom, you're a great mom. And if there's one thing, maybe there were times you loved us pretty hard, which means if you mess with my kid, you have to mess with me.
Yep. Is the mama
So
bear.
I don't care who's in my way. I'm going to. And so, I think it was an all family thing to be an example to live into what God's called us to be. And so I would express that gratitude more definitively sooner. And I would say this, I would let go of the second guessing
Mm,
much sooner. And we live in an age and time that there is blessing to be able to make that choice to be in or out or a mix of both or to go through seasons
yeah.
and to trust that God is going to be there. He's never leaving us within any of those seasons. I was at a season for a little bit at home, and that wasn't the right season for me.
Mhm.
And that's okay. And
Yeah.
so getting out of our heads and to show ourselves some grace and to be surrounded by lots of different kind of women that we could be encouraged. I don't think shame and blame come from the Lord.
Yeah. That's good.
They don't. And so if we begin to experience those things, it's good to check in with a prayer partner or someone else that's going to go, wait a minute, that's not right.
Mm,
And so let me hold up the mirror of the woman I am seeing and observing, right? And let's get that better aligned. And to trust that God is going to do a good work in all of us, no matter where we're standing. And the question I would ask is in what ways are we experiencing joy in the work we are currently doing where we are?
yeah. Mhm.
And as Grandpa Casey would often say, if I were having that day and I'd call him, he'd be a great storyteller. And there would be a commercial that would say, "Got milk?" question mark. And he would just simply say, "Got joy?" And I'd go, "Oh, I'll call you back later," because the letters were out of order. And it was a reminder when you get them back in order, we can get back to that commitment to joy, whether it's joy in the messy paint and the messy house, if it's the joy in a messy team at work, wherever that lives. Lord, what are you calling to me to do in this time and place right now? And whatever that is, may I be obedient and seek the joy within that, what you're calling me to do.
Oh, that's beautiful. And Doreen, this conversation just felt like the biggest hug. I wish I was there to give you a big hug right now. I got tears in my eyes. You are so special. Thank you so much. I know that
That catch.
people listening are just gonna feel just such warmth and connectedness and relief and perspective and wisdom, everything that you've given. Thank you so much. I love
You're
you a lot.
welcome. And when in doubt, Lord knows, Proverbs 31 will remind us all as women that in
Hmm.
whatever roles that we have, we're doing the good work for our families. And more importantly, we're doing the good work for the Lord. So let's
Amen.
be about our Father's business. Let's go, team, go.
Amen. Oh, thanks, Aunt Doreen.
Woo!